Let's be respectful.
Joe and Cheeseburger.
She was in Jersey. She was driving down the highway in a car. She got into she was pulled over by two New Jersey state troopers, two Black Panthers. Shootout ensued. One of the cops was shot and killed. One of the Panthers was shot and killed. She was arrested, convicted of life in prison. She subsequently escaped, fled to Cuba. Over the years, her bounty sort of has been increased. Christine Todd Whitman increased it to $1 million. It's just recently been increased to $2 million, which basically is setting off a worldwide bounty hunter hunt for her. But that's who Assata Shakur is. Her original name was Joanne Chestnut. We're going to move on. I'm sorry.
She's Tupac's godmother.
We're going to move on. I'm sorry.
I wish Obama would pardon the Philadelphia Panthers.
He should. We're going to move on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. So we can. This is one of the hardest parts about sharing this is we have so much to say, but we'll make sure everyone speaks. Tom Berner and then Diane.
Martin King made a pretty dramatic speech in the Riverside Church. It must have been in the early middle '60s.
Yeah, about 67. You're talking about turning against the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, 67.
My question is, what impact did that have on him? I mean, we know that was. In other words, how was he treated after that speech versus before?
Yeah, he wasn't in the favor of the federal government with Johnson or anybody else. And I think, and many historians, I agree with them. They get it from me. Is that was the date of the beginning for his mark of assassination? Okay, coming out against the Vietnam War and conciliatory things he said about communists, which he shouldn't have done.
In that speech?
No, different.
What?
In fact, he told Stokely Carmichael, he said, come on to church, I'm going to come out against the war. And Stokely said, well, I like to hear you speak. It makes me want to tap my toes, because he's a Southern Baptist. And then when he was there, Stokely was the first one to stand up and give him applause for coming out against the war. But Johnson and his former allies, even in the movement itself, turned against him. But his commitment was to justice, not being popular.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Diane, and then David, and then Ron. We'll close out with Ron. So Diane, please.
I know you've done a lot of research on communists, individual communists.
Yeah, make a living at it.
To different movements, and I wondered if you have any specifics about communists that participated in the civil rights movement during this era, and the whole struggle against racism too.
Yeah, well, they from 55 Montgomery to 65, which we saw today. Today they were outlawed. King, SCLC pushed them aside. Now SNCC would welcome them in, okay, and use their energy.
She has something personal to contribute to.
Yes, because you were involved in all these things. Yeah. King became more radical toward the end of his life. Okay, and but yeah, the movement, the same thing happened even at the NAACP. Walter White, who was one of these a black guy, but he was white enough to pass for white. He expelled Du Bois from the NAACP. One of the men who helped create it. Yeah, one of the founders. Yeah, and of course he got so sick and tired. Du Bois did at the end of his life. He lived about 90s, I think. He got so sick and tired. He said, "I'm getting out of this freaking thing." And he joined the Communist Party. Went to Kenya, where he
Ghana.
What did I say?
Kenya.
Oh, I'm sick.
That's all right.
Yeah, and Ghana, and Georgia Bongo, my buddy, he teaches African studies on campus. We got hired the same day. But he went there with the father of black nationalism at that time. It's not Jomo Kenyatta. Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah, yeah. And in the last book I had, I put his letter to Gus Hall, saying, "Let me in, man." And basically it was like, yeah, I'm out of here, and stick a finger in your eye. Okay? Brave man.
We're going to, in response to that Debbie?
Yeah, Debbie.
Please, because for those of you who don't know, Debbie Bell was a founding member of SNCC and has first-hand experience. Please.
Well, I had brief, I was arrested, on one of the house I was arrested.
Wow.
Uh,
She's so dangerous. She is.
he tried to
I'm sorry, I didn't.
slip talk me from
Oh, is that right?
Right.
the,
Yeah.
representing the,
For those, oh,
and
sorry.
I've been in jail in the South,
Oh, yeah.
alone, with no, representation.
Hmm.
For,
I,
We can't hear back here.
I'm gonna repeat it.
yeah.
I wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
What she was saying when, I'm sorry.
Well, as all movements have minuses, and this is one of the places where there's been contradictory actions.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. The Marxist theory of history, the dialectic is conflict.
What happened with Debbie was she was in the working in the South as a member of SNCC and was arrested. While she was in jail, SNCC basically expelled her from the organization and left her in prison as basically an organizer for them, but an expelled organizer. Her and some other members of SNCC because they were communists. So I guess that's speaking towards. As a clarifying, I would say a clarifying point that SNCC was more accepting of communist members when in fact they were not.
Yeah.
And I think in recent history, Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, they actually, some of them denied that they did this, but in fact, you know that they did. David, and then Ron.
You may have gone too far, Phil, but noticing here that you're from Kentucky,
Yeah.
I'm interested to know what you think of your.
Can't hear you.
I'm interested to know what he would make of a voter ID, the voter ID laws, in reference to rural people, in particular rural whites,
Yeah.
and also that the oil and gas industry is stepping up its exploitation of, among other things, rural Pennsylvania, rural
Yeah.
regions all over.
Strip mining, but especially fracking.
Yeah, and what you make of it is the voter, makes sense the voter idea has something to do with disenfranchising the people so that the oil and gas industry can take their land from them, essentially.
Yeah, and been able to a long time because of the mineral rights. So you get your house, you buy it. In fact, my dad lost his house to the sort of wildcat coal miner, and we had to talk him out of killing him. Okay. The 16-ton song has the right one don't get you, then the left one will. But, yeah, that's a big fight. The green left is a very important movement. Now, the ID law does hurt rural whites, but there's not that many left. Okay, in Louisville, the only city in Kentucky that's big and urban, the last two elections went for Obama. Okay, because of the ethnic, especially the black makeup. But the rural whites, there's not many of them left. They pulled up when the coal industry went down, and same in northeast Pennsylvania too. But the major reason, then I'll end here. The major reason for the photo ID laws and all the other, you can't register the same day. All of that is racially motivated. All that's code, racial codes and class codes too. Okay, so because those people who are people of color and poor people, even poor white, they're all expendable. Okay, they're disposable. That's deeply in the culture. Does that answer?
Yeah,
We're
Yeah.
gonna have one more Ron?
Yeah, I got a question about the reparations movement. What do you think about that? I think some of you who follow this might remember that when Obama first got elected to Congress, he came out against reparations, and he came out against reparations again in 2008. So he put a kibosh on that like right away.
Yeah.
I read this book recently called When Affirmative Action Was White. I don't know if you've heard of that book. And it talks about how like black people were like systematically excluded from the New Deal, from the GI Bill, and we always talk about reparations as being like the slavery period, but we never extend that actually to like Jim Crow and all that other terror that we had to face and exclusion. What do you think about that? Do you think that's like a legal thing? Could we use that in the reparations movement or something?
Yeah, no, and it has to be pushed. They give reparations just about to everybody else. Japanese survivors, black lung disease to white coal miners, and of course it's a racial thing again. But the largest example of uncompensated labor was the centuries of slavery. And on the eve of the Civil War, there were more millionaires in the South because of the property owned in slaves, not land. Okay, it wasn't like you know, they paid them a wage, although they used the thing. Well, we give them a place to live, you know, and they got housing and food, and so it's a positive good. Okay, white folks really believe that. But I'm sure if the situation was reversed, white people, if they just a few affirmative action jobs, they cry and whine, make me sick. You know, it's so nice to be around folks I can actually say this stuff without getting mad at me. But the kids need to hear it, you know, and I'm glad to do it, and I can't believe they actually pay me for a living to indoctrinate them, but I'm going to keep on doing it. I want to do like Marx. He died working at his desk. Okay, I'll die working. Besides, my wife won't let me die any other way. She needs a money. Okay, you guys.
Thank you.
It's always important to remember, comrades and friends, that history is something that we all must consider and learn about, because as the old expression goes, and as we see from modern and current events, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And those of us who don't appreciate the struggles of the past, both for our democratic rights as well as the democratic rights of all those around us, we're slowly slowly becoming victim to losing some of those rights. And we have to keep that struggle in mind, we have to keep that history in mind, so we can keep those accomplishments not just in mind, but on the table. I want to thank Dr. Howard once again. University from the Scranton area, and we're definitely glad to have him here as a speaker, as a member of our party, as a participant as far as Black history is concerned, and we certainly applaud his work and his research.
Yeah.
Just want to close out with a couple things. I found this on the internet. I thought this was very interesting. This is kind of segue into kind of what we were talking about earlier. It's an old newspaper article / sign from the South. Oh yeah. It says, I'm going to try to read this from the back. It says, Negroes beware. Do not attend communist meetings.
Right.
Paid organizers for the communists are only trying to get Negroes in trouble. Alabama is a good place for good Negroes to live in, but is a bad place for Negroes who believe in social equality. The Ku Klux Klan is watching you, take heed. Tell the communist leaders to leave. Report all communist meetings to the Ku Klux Klan gives their address. I couldn't find a better recruiting poster for the Communist Party than saying that if the Klan is against us, then damn it, everybody in here should join. We stand for rights. We stand for equal rights. We stand for human rights. We stand for people and profit. People and nature before profits. And we invite you as guests, as members, to join us with our struggle. Because this struggle needs everyone. This struggle needs you as participants. This struggle needs you as workers. This struggle is a constant struggle that we have to constantly fight for. The battles that we've already won, we have to maintain, because the war continues, so to speak. So I invite all of you who are here, who are interested in joining. We have join cards outside. We also have literature outside, which is about our program, our policies, our Constitution, about socialism. How can it benefit you? How can it benefit those around you? I always say, just as a side note, you know, if you're a working class and you support capitalism, you're kind of like the slave that supports slavery, hoping one day that you'll someday be the slave master, but it just won't happen. That being said, I'm going to bring up Marty real quick. If he promises, it's going to be quick.
All right.
He's got, since we last met for African American History Month, of course, you know, we lost a progressive fighter for social justice, that being Nelson Mandela. Marty here has written a poem which he'd like to read in honor to Nelson Mandela. And being that this is African American History Month, or Black History Month, we would like to acknowledge him, and then we're going to close out from there. Marty, the floor is yours, sir.
I've only read this poem once. Well, that's not true. A few homeless people have heard it. But I read it to my local union. Everybody loved it. At my job, I work here in West Philly. I'm not the union steward or anything. We have a great steward. But they loved it, and I hope everyone here likes it too. And I'm sad Mr. Karamo is not in the audience, because if it weren't for him, I probably would never have made this. Because he came in here and he read poetry at an event we had, and it inspired me. This is called the Half Nelson. Rest in peace, Tata Madiba. Tata means Papa. Madiba was his clan name, but all those African names must just sound the same, because the English came, and some white lady called him Nelson. Archbishop Desmond Tutu shed tears of joy when he saw a black woman crying on the shoulder of a white man, and they gazed up at the same blue sky, thinking of the man they both called father. Tata Madiba. Good God, good God, good God. Did you ever dream that just across the stream, in a little place called India, where caste segregation once defined a nation, that for a whole week, all across that land, they would stop to honor a black man? A man who didn't speak much, except when it was needed, and when he issued an order, you best believe it was completed. His impeccable style revealed great taste. He was slow to anger, despite the injustice he faced. Even when he was left to waste, as Whitey closed up that dungeon gate, he resisted the urge to stoop to hate. First he was a lawyer, founding the first black law firm. But Mandela and Tambo made those white racists squirm, so he went into politics. Then white people kept playing dirty tricks. So he called up Mao and the Red Chinese and said, "Hey, can we get some guns, please?" This is a short interlude from Joe McDonald. And you dare to call me a terrorist while you stare down your guns, when I think of all the things that you have done. You have conquered many nations, divided many lands. You have terrorized their people. You ruled with an iron hand, and you brought this reign of terror to my land. It's an Irish Revolutionary Republican song against the British, who starved us, and that's why I'm here. This is called Full Nelson, and it's the last one. It's like a half. Half Nelson is a wrestling move, and the Full Nelson is also a wrestling move. You don't know about the Full Nelson, so I'll give you a quick introduction. Like Gil Scott-Heron, I found myself digging through the rubble, and I must say, someone went to a hell of a lot of trouble to give us a totally unreliable picture of our struggle. Thank God they weren't too subtle in painting a history that's only partly true, to whitewash Nelson halfway just for you, to give you half-truth to keep you in a bubble, so you'd forget Nelson's first name was Trouble. I mean, y'all still say Nelson since that's his name by law, but his mama called him something else, and that something else was Rolilala. That's a Xhosa word that means troublemaker. Yes, he had a preference for peace, but that man was no Quaker. Up is down, war is peace, revolutionary is a marketing term, and affluenza is a real disease. The workers' union at Polaroid made those honkies real paranoid when they refused to develop black IDs, but photos of Mandela were banned, if you please. Yes, identification papers Africans required to work for white companies if they so desired, but see, that's who had all the money. Seems when a guy is broke, girls look at him funny. Ninge kuo malaika, isaze samwo roho yangu. That means, my angel, I would marry you, but money is troubling my soul. Miriam Makeba sang that song, that famous Kenyan melody in Swahili. No wonder her career ain't last too long, because she sang for her angel, Stokely Carmichael. Black Panther, Black Power, Black Pride. Whites just could not abide. That stuff's too racy, so they say. And they wonder why Belafonte's mad at Beyonce. Jay-Z sings for himself, not for Liberation Day. And Kanye is a proud non-reader of books. He said it. But back in those days, it didn't matter how pretty the tune. As soon as you seemed human, better get to stepping soon. You see, for the man who was a South African, at work he was a boy. At home he was grandpa. At work he was a toy. His whole life was a flip-flop. Madiba didn't want to work with whites. A majority of them voted for apartheid, and he never met one that defended his rights until his black brother Moses Kotane said, "Hey man, you gotta check out this Communist Party." For the first time in his 40 years, he saw whites, blacks, and Indians treating each other like peers. So began the long walk to freedom. So he put down the law book, picked up the red book, closed up the law firm, and in 1962 began an 18-year prison term. He was ready for war, but he preferred peace. He admired the West, but all his friends were in the East. He knew to wait until conditions were ripe to taste the fruits of full freedom and boil up his favorite food, tripe. It's almost done, I promise. He made trouble from an early age, and now in Kunu rests an heroic sage. They say behind every powerful man is an even more powerful woman. Mandela married thrice. The first was a Jehovah's Witness. She was nice, but they don't do politics. The second, Winnie was a radical social worker. The third was a dear friend's widow. When he shook Raul Castro's hand, Obama had to know about Joe Slovo, Mandela, and Winnie all raising clenched fists long after them shackles came off his wrists. But it was Graça Machel Mandela, an amazing woman who was very unique, now a widow of two great men, including Nelson's old best friend, Comrade Samora, first black president of Mozambique. The African National Congress says stage 1 is done. Africa is free of white rule, but we still haven't won. Stage 2 has something to do with that 1% business. Apartheid has gone in the dustbin of time, but economically blacks are still behind. Tata Madiba only got us halfway down the line. Now it's coming time for us to finish the revolution. On April 4th, 1977, Martin told us how we could build heaven. Hell is guarded by a three-headed dragon, racism, capitalism, and militarism. Good thing Mandela didn't say all that, or he'd have got worse than prison. The main fight he had to wage was against Anglo-Saxon racial supremacism, like my Irish people's rage against the very same imperialism. I could conclude it if everyone was content, but someday you might hear the rest.
Thank you.
Give him a round of applause.